Okay, so I was having some issues with the conversion of the file. When I convert it to a PowerPoint and or a PDF, it does not properly translate the font and the effect that I put on the fonts. So I think the better way to present this would be by just screen recording it directly from the software which I use to create the presentation, which is Canva. So let's do it. Converse sneakers and the significance to Spider Gwen, aka Go Spider / Gwen Stacy. All right, so the very beginning, we have a little bit of history to go over. This is Marquis Mills Converse. Back in 1908, he established the Converse brand, and it's not really anything like what we would know it as today. He used to do these rubber boots for work, or rain boots, galoshes. So this is actually kind of interesting. Like we see this, like I didn't know this. I mean, I knew this, but I didn't realize what it could look like. And here we have a pair of those galoshes. They're selling on eBay for like $63, which is not so bad considering they're vintage. So it's pretty cool. A little bit after, so roughly like 15 years after, there was this basketball player, Chuck Taylor. He was looking to like kind of revolutionize the shoe game for basketball because back then they didn't really have shoes that were designed for basketball. So Chuck Taylor came in the scene, and then he joined forces with the Converse company to design these revolutionary sneakers that were made with a rubber sole, but with a canvas top, which at the time was unheard of. They already had the look that we are familiar with today, and they were like very very popular. The man Chuck Taylor, he like made sure to go to like basketball courts and promote the product, and it really like quickly became a staple in basketball culture at the time. But we don't really see Converse sneakers on any basketball players today, right? So how'd it happen? Well, so the very thing that made Converse stand out in the first place, which was their construction in canvas, also was responsible for its downfall, because over time people started realizing that maybe canvas was not the most optimal material for an upper. When Nike came in the scene with the Bruin, they introduced leather and suede uppers, which were comfortable for players, and so that became the standard, making it so the canvas uppers like they fell off, right? They fell off. And here we have a pair of vintage Bruins from the 80s, again from eBay. If I'm not mistaken, these are not very expensive either. So, and then so because canvas sneakers kind of lost their place in the market for basketball, they really kind of had to like find something else. The punk rock movement was happening around the time during the late 70s and the 80s, when Nike came in the shoe game, and they embraced the Converse sneaker for themselves. So here we have a few examples of punk rock artists wearing the Converse, which really made it so Converse became kind of synonymous with the movement. I know that you may argue that Nirvana is not punk rock, but come on, it's pretty up there. Here we have a pair of Kurt Cobain's Converse from way back, and they were also kind of indirectly like facilitated the customization of shoes, because the shoes are made of canvas, so you can paint them. And Kurt Cobain himself would like scribble on his toe caps, and it really quickly became synonymous with the punk rock movement and rebellious nature. So Converse has now found another public to market to. And now for the lead that's been buried, Spider Gwen. And why the shoes matter. All right. Starting from her origins in the comics, this was the original spread for Gwen's design in the comics. So here we have very beautiful design. You know, very contrasted, very consistent color palette. You can see that the webs in her arms and her hood are the same color as the shoes, and you know, just overall like really powerful design, I'd say. Very memorable. So, you know, a lot of great things to say about this. But what we're looking to really explain here is what's happening with the shoes. So, on the note from the image that we just saw at the bottom, it says that the feet look like Chucks. So she was always intended to be wearing Chuck Taylor All-Stars under her suit, and for the color to be painted over the suit in this bright turquoise color. And we also have like other panels to look at that demonstrate this. So as you can see on the panel on the left, you can see the silhouette of the shoe under her suit with the high top poking through. There's the prominence of the shoe under the suit. And also you can see on the right panel that the sole of the Converse sneaker was also there. So she wears the sneaker under her suit. And yet, when they adapted her character into movie form, they completely ditched that aspect of her design and replaced it with ballet flats or the point shoe. Why is this? How could this happen? Why would they change an important part of her design? And what would this even mean for her character? It's a pretty big change, so it has to mean something, right? So in the movie, it kind of makes sense. You know, the character, she moves with elegance, poise, and precision. And those are things that we can equate with ballet and, you know, trained dancers. So, you know, it's not that far off to see her wearing the ballet shoes and having this new aspect of her character showing. But then they also managed to like sneak in the stealth aspect of her character. For example, on this pose that she's doing on the left, she like lands and there's no sound. But if you know anything about point shoes, is that they're really loud. The tip of the shoe is like literally made out of like densely packed cardboard. So when you hit the ground with it, it makes a really loud noise. So it really like felt a little bit conflated and a little bit misguided and not really like thought through when they incorporated this into her design. Also wears them at school with her uniform, which again, like ballet shoes were not designed to be walked around in, so it's kind of impractical. In essence, there was like some coolness, you know, to the whole thing of like, oh, she's fighting in point shoes, and you know, she's like moving like a ballerina while she's fighting, and that's cool. That's great, but also it doesn't really make any sense for the character or the practicality of it all, which again, like you could argue against practicality for the sake of style, but it just really didn't make sense, especially considering her previous design. Well, so if they didn't do it for like a reasonable purpose, then how could it even happen? Well, I can tell you my theory, and that is misinterpretation. So here we can see some covers of the Spider-Gwen comics that were released before the movie, Into the Spider-Verse, and you can see on the feet that they don't really look like Chucks anymore. They kind of look like just flats sitting on top of her costume, or like she's wearing flats under the costume. How could this even happen? How is it that the artists that are working on the comic for this character are misinterpreting the shoe that she's wearing? Well, I can explain to you like very briefly. Basically, a lot of times, almost all the times, the cover artists are not the same people that are working on the panels. So they only like get, you know, pictures of the characters to draw, and then they make an illustration based off of it. As you can see, like this comic, Gwenverse, has the panels being drawn in a completely different style as to one of the potential covers for the same comic. So you can kind of see how things could get lost in translation when it comes to the character design. People have different interpretations of the character when they're drawing the cover. And again, we can see more examples of covers that were drawn by people who were not working on the panels themselves. And they all kind of have this look. You know, she looks like she's wearing a slipper or a loafer or flats. And it's really kind of disappointing to see that, you know, such a cool aspect of her character was lost like this just because people didn't really get the memo. Why does this even matter? Why does she need to wear, you know, Converse sneakers? Why can't it be the flat or why can't it be the ballet shoe? Well, it's because her character is literally a rock star, okay? She's punk rock and she plays the drums, and that's her like really huge part of her characterization is that she is, you know, rebellious and she's punk. So for her to be wearing Converse would only make sense, and for her to be wearing ballet shoes and have this like added onto her character kind of sort of, you know, is against that. Um, and now this is the moment that you may be thinking, well, maybe they changed that aspect of her character, you know. Maybe in the comics she was punk rock, and they decided to change her into graceful, you know, ballet trained dancer for the movies. But in the movies, she also is a punk rock drummer. So it doesn't really make sense for them to like add more, you know, the flavor that they were looking to add with that ballet aspect onto something that they were also like they were willing to have her be a punk rock drummer as well as a ballet dancer, and that kind of, you know, is a little bit conflicting. So she really didn't need to have that aspect of her design changed and have this aspect of her personality added on to something that is completely, you know, against the essence of who she is. And at the end of the day, Gwen is a hero, who is perceived as a criminal by the masses, but she still does what she does because that's the right thing to do. The funny parallel that I was able to find while researching for this presentation was that the Ramones had their origins in Forest Hills, Queens, and that's where the entirety of the cast of Spider-Man is from. Even among different universes, they're always from Forest Hills, Queens. So it's like a really fun parallel to think about that she, you know, she's a punk rock artist from Forest Hill, like the Ramones were, who, by the way, wore Converse all the time. So yeah, they ended up actually backtracking when the sequel for Into the Spider-Verse was released. They gave her Converse sneakers, and she simply wears them over the suit, and that's it. And all is well. So they were able to realize their fault here in this character design mistake, and they moved on. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. A little disclaimer here at the bottom. You know, all of the images of Gwen Stacy are property of Sony Pictures and Columbia Pictures in association with Marvel Entertainment. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to something that I'm kind of passionate about. Thank you kindly.